Thanks everybody for showing up. Appreciate it. It's lunchtime, so I think this is our lunch and our post-prandial talk. So we're all here today. We're going to talk to you guys about Salesforce IoT, basically a product walkthrough about from the high-level strategic perspective where we sit in the Salesforce ecosystem, and we'll actually show you how to use our product. But we should first introduce ourselves. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a product manager on the IoT team. I'm responsible for a number of the features that we'll be looking at today, including context, orchestrations, and also the API.
Yes. And I'm Tim. I'm another product manager on the team, so I own actions as well as usage, allocations, activity log, and a few other usability features. You want to do this one?
Sure. So obviously, you guys have all seen this slide a number of times, and you'll just see it more and more throughout this conference. We are showing you live product today. It will be available in any developer edition org within a couple weeks. But as always, make your purchasing decisions based on generally available product. So we'll be using stuff that you'll be able to get your hands on within about a month. Great. All right. So in terms of what we're going to do today, we're going to spend like 5 minutes, really quick, just talking about what Salesforce IoT is, where it sits in the IoT market, and then we're going to just dive right into hands-on product demonstration and really walk you through everything that you need to know to get set up with IoT for the first time. We'll cover a couple different technologies there that you need to learn: platform events, context, orchestrations, and Iot Insights. If we have time at the end, we can spend some extra time walking through anything you guys might like. So if you want to see the API, we can do that. We could write more complex business rules, sort of whatever you want. So we'll leave time for that unless you guys have a bunch of questions. All right, so you want to dive right into it?
Absolutely. I am excited.
I hope you guys are excited too. All right, so first thing we want to start with is what exactly is this IoT thing? So how many of you in the audience already have IoT projects going on at your business? A couple. Do any of you have plans for projects to start up soon or in the process of planning? A couple head nods, yeah. So I think that what's really important to understand is how to actually make these whole projects successful, right? IoT basically becomes an integration problem at some point. And yes, there's some components that you need to ensure your success. So it's probably useful to have things when you're doing an Internet of Things project. You need a way for those things to be able to send data, some sort of connectivity solution. And most of our customers will leverage an IoT platform, such as AWS, Google Cloud Platform, or we have a number of customers who also use Dell Boomi, and MuleSoft is also an option as well. So those are all necessary components of setting up IoT. But we find that that's where a lot of people stop. So what they end up doing is they invest a ton of money in these projects, and at the end of the day, they have a data lake. And they get really excited because they have all the data, but they realize that they're not really making any money off of just having that data sitting around. So what we're really doing with Salesforce IoT is bridging that gap between the technology and the customer. So we want to make sure that you can make your decisions in the context of all the information you have about your customer. We're really focused on action and making sure that that existing investment you've made in your IoT infrastructure translates into customer experiences and at the end of the day, some value that your business is providing to those customers or internal users. So that's really what we're all about, is how do we bring CRM and all this IoT technology together to actually get into this whole fourth industrial revolution that you're going to hear so much about at Dreamforce. So in terms of the actual inner workings of IoT, yes, you're going to have your things. You're going to have some devices. They might have connectivity on them. You might need to purchase that separately. You'll probably have an IoT platform of some kind. Most devices aren't particularly smart, so you're going to want to aggregate that data, do some manipulation somewhere else. Once you get into the Salesforce IoT land, there's a couple key things that we want to discuss. So context will help you do data mapping. Orchestrations are where you will write your business rules and automations. Insights is where you'll be able to show users within your Salesforce organization, or perhaps partners who use communities, all the information that you've been getting from your IoT devices. You'll also be able to easily make callouts to other IoT or other products in your IoT setup. So you might have some APIs that you've exposed in a management layer of the device. You can make a call out to that using standard Salesforce tools. So we're going to dive into the stuff that's really in the box here and make sure that you understand how to get all of that set up. And it's pretty much all clicks, not code. It is all clicks, not code.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right.
Do me a favor though. I love the description. Make it a little more concrete for me and tell me how people actually translate that into real life.
Sure, absolutely. So a customer that I've been working closely with over the past year is Jacuzzi. If you attend the IoT keynote tomorrow, you can hear more about their story and what they've done to really honestly transform the business that they're in. So Jacuzzi obviously manufactures hot tubs, and what they decided to do was manufacture a new high-end hot tub. And this hot tub has a component in it that actually takes readings about what's happening with the tub. So I think last November-ish, shortly after Dreamforce, they started engaging with a hardware company to manufacture this little device. They also made sure that they'd be able to get that data into their IoT platform, and they use AWS for this platform. Then they got Salesforce IoT. They started setting up these contexts and orchestrations. They actually acted as a pilot customer for this Insights component for us. And honestly, within 6 months, they went from contacting a hardware company to having hot tubs rolling off the manufacturing line that were using this IoT solution to do proactive service. So this is a real thing. Again, if you'd love to hear more about Jacuzzi, attend that keynote tomorrow, and they'll go in depth about all the use cases that they've enabled.
Excellent.
Great. So I think it's time to start getting hands-on a little bit and learn more about what we need to do to actually make this happen. Sound good?
I am, did I say galvanized already?
No, we didn't.
I am galvanized.
We got to come up with lots of synonyms. All right,
Okay.
So let's get going.
Okay, let's dive right in.
Okay, so now we want to start working through what do you actually need to do to get things set up. And we're just going to go straight into it. So the number one thing is we want to talk about platform events. Have any of you used platform events yet? Okay, a couple. So if you haven't, no big deal. They're exactly the same as pretty much any other custom object you'd set up. And it's really this little magic connector, right, between all that data that you have sitting in AWS or GCP or whatever your on-prem data lake is, and Salesforce, where all of your customer information and your ability to create that customer experience lives. So platform events are going to be that glue that gets the data from point A to point B. So what are platform events? Basically just a messaging architecture within Salesforce, publish, subscribe. So you will have your IoT platform publish these events, and IoT will subscribe to them. Pretty straightforward. There's tons of resources that you can look into to learn more. There's trailheads that have hands-on activities. We also have a GitHub that is linked here that has some code from partners who've been working with us to build connectors, and that will help you write like a Lambda function that will create the platform event for you. We'll be using mock data today, and we'll show you how to do that within Salesforce, but when it gets time to really start productizing, check out this code, especially if you're using AWS, GCP, Azure. There's helper code for all of that to get you started.
Seems like you would really remove a barrier to adoption.
Absolutely. I mean, again, this is an integration project, so figuring out how to do those point-to-point connections, that is what really becomes the bulk of doing this IoT work. We're going to make it so easy for you to do the stuff in Salesforce today. You really just need to figure out how to get the data in, and using that link should really help you a lot.
Spectacular.
All right, so let's dive into Salesforce now, I think, and show a hands-on. So we're going to just blaze through this because platform events are pretty straightforward. So platform events live in setup. All of the IoT stuff lives in setup. So we're going to click into setup, and we're just going to search for platform events. And let's talk about use cases a little bit. So let's do a little bit of role play.
Okay, so let's up level a bit, and yes, I will think about what is my company and what are the business outcomes I'm trying to drive, right? And so for the purposes of this talk, we're gonna pretend that I am the Salesforce administrator for a company that manufactures caravans. Caravans are sort of like the big sand crawlers in Star Wars. Or like the RVs and stuff. And so you can imagine that until the fourth industrial revolution rolled around, we basically just leased out caravans to people, and then they took them on their journeys. But now we are putting sensors inside of these things, and why is that? It's for a purpose, right? And it's because we don't want to just rent caravans anymore, but we actually want to create a service model, a business transformation around caravans, where it's not just we lease you the caravan and then bye-bye, but when you are in your journey, you're in Death Valley and it gets really hot, and we know that the engine is about to overheat or something like that, we can actually monitor that for you automatically and open cases for people to triage and take care of, or even notify you that you need to be careful about something. And so that's sort of the business use case, and we are modeling the caravans with a custom object, a custom record. You can see that this is a developer edition org, and so I was lazy and I only put in 2, but you can imagine there's 100 or 200 of them based on the company you're in.
Perfect. So what we want to do is figure out what is the kind of data that those caravans will need to send to Salesforce to enable that proactive service use case.
Data in the form of events, right?
Yes.
Coming from the
Exactly.
From the sensors.
So what is the information that's coming from the sensors that's going to enable, let's focus on the temperature monitoring, for instance.
So that's probably the temperature then.
Okay, so all we did is we pressed new platform event, and Tim is going to go ahead and make one called temperature,
Okay.
just like making any other custom object. So now what we need to do is add custom fields to this platform event. So obviously I'm guessing that we need to measure the temperature, right?
Yes, I just made a blooper.
Okay.
I called this platform event temperature, but it's really a caravan event, isn't it?
Well, we can fix that, thankfully. So we can just have like a generic caravan event, and a lot of this depends on how you actually want to create your implementation. So maybe you want to start really, really small and have individual messages for each type of reading. You might also want to have a bigger one. It honestly depends on the kind of data that you're getting and the frequency of it. So now we have a caravan event, a caravan reading, and we'll add temperature to that.
Okay.
So you're just going to add a field, pretty straightforward. And this is how, I think you have a P at the end of that.
Oh, F for Fahrenheit.
Oh, in Fahrenheit. Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and save that. So you could kind of stop here, except that there's one extra thing that you need to do for IoT. So when we're getting all this data in, we need to know which caravan is overheating. Otherwise, we can't really do anything, right? Kind of useless to say like, well, I got a bunch of messages and one of the caravans is like definitely in trouble, but I have no idea which one, so I can't create any customer experience. So what kind of data could you add to this event that could come in with every single one so that the caravans can identify themselves?
Right, so every caravan has a unique identifier, right, that disambiguates it from every other thing. And so if you look here, we are modeling that using this column called the caravan ID. And so we just need to make sure that when a caravan sends an event into Salesforce, it actually declares which caravan it is.
So you would have the team that's working on AWS or GCP or your private cloud solution just make sure that they included this field.
All right, and we'll call it the UUID.
Perfect.
What does that mean? I don't know.
And then make sure that that's a required field. Again, if we don't have it, we can't do anything with it.
Okay.
So for a basic use case, you can just stop here. A lot of you, when you start implementing this at your own companies, might probably add a couple extra fields. But again, the first thing that you need to demonstrate is I can get the data from point A to point B. It doesn't need to be all 50 fields. I've worked with customers who have tried doing all 50 or 150 fields at once, and it's a horrible experience for everyone involved. So first, make sure that the two teams are able to send data, and then worry about adding on additional complexity. It's much more important to do the end-to-end simply once than to try to roll everything out all at once. So iterative development is really key in these kinds of projects. All right, so platform events are set up.
I think that's good, right?
Perfect.
Let's go back to the presentation, shall we?
All right, so now we're going to switch gears, and Tim's going to explain, and I'm going to type.
All right, okay. So what you just saw, what we set up is not IoT specific. That is a Salesforce just platform feature that IoT integrates with to get your data in. And so you saw some of the GitHub link earlier that shows connectors from IoT platforms. Those are actually generic, so you don't even have to use those to send data to us. You can use those to get data into the platform. Now we're going to make it meaningful in the context of Salesforce IoT. And so think about it from the perspective of sort of the Salesforce right now, is this dude has just set up a event, a single channel for all of his caravans to send events in. And you can visualize it as a stream. I wonder if I have a stream, in fact. Do I have a stream? Okay, we'll skip that for now. And you can visualize it as a stream on the left of a bunch of events coming from different caravans, all flowing into Salesforce, all flowing into the same endpoint. And so the next thing you need to do is you need to tell Salesforce how do you interpret those events, and in particular, how do you map those events to records. Right? There's a caravan that has a record. It's represented by a record in Salesforce. And we need to tell Salesforce IoT this event that comes in maps to this particular record. And so if you remember earlier, I added something called a UUID field to the event. And that's what we call a key. And so if you look on the left, this is a different name, but you can see caravan ID 2357 11 13 17 19. And basically what we need to do is tell Salesforce, hey, do a join, or for each event that comes in, inspect a particular field and compare it to fields in a column in Salesforce object table to map the things together. That's what we call contextual enrichment. So let's just do that.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you would want to do that mapping versus sending all of that data in the event?
So firstly, sensors are typically, so cheap sensors especially are dumb. And what I mean by that is they don't know who owns them or what is the maintenance plan or all the other stuff that's inside of CRM, right? They don't have that data in the first place. And number two is that getting data from your device over a mobile network to an IoT platform and getting data out of an IoT platform and into Salesforce, they charge you based on the amount of volume that you're transferring. And so to keep costs low, you generally try to move as little data as possible. And so in this case, we're only moving the telemetry data. That is, what is the temperature? And in this slide, we do latitude, longitude, but we wanted to keep it simple for the demo. Okay,
Perfect.
So why don't we go into the product and set up that context. So we're going to go for context, and you'll see this is the first thing that is actually IoT specific. So it's in the IoT setup. And we're going to just create a new one. Okay, and we're going to name it based on the use case. So this is just caravans. And this is where we tell Salesforce IoT again, listen to these types of events that are being published to the bus, the enterprise messaging platform, and associate them with these particular records inside of Salesforce using a comparison. And so can you click on event data and add an event that is relevant to us? So temperature is my blooper from earlier, but we'll use caravan reading. And the one that we're inspecting is the ID on that event. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, if you had multiple fields that were required on this event, then they would all be listed here. But I only chose ID for the sake of time. And then for reference data, remember that the object model that we're using is a caravan custom object. And so we're basically mapping events to records in Salesforce. And that's what we're doing here in caravan enrichment. So that was easy. And if you noticed, Michelle showed earlier that we're using the caravan ID column rather than the 15-digit ID for the Salesforce record itself.
That's the number that will be assigned during the manufacturing process when it comes off the line or during some sort of registration flow.
Right. Okay. There you go. And do you see that camera there? What do you think that camera is?
So you can upload a photo and make sure that at a glance you can see exactly what this is all about. So super good if you need to do some fun internal demos to your higher ups and you want to explain what you've been working on for the past week.
Net new feature. Okay. All right, let's go ahead, save and activate. Okay, so what we've done now is we've basically done the setup for IoT, which is set up event ingestion from outside, from the devices, and associate it with the correct CRM contextual data, contextual enrichment. What do we need to do next?
Yeah, so the big thing that I really wanted to do was actually monitor the temperature, and then when I get a high temperature reading, I want to be able to create a case and then make sure that my service agents have the right information they need to be able to correctly close a case and get anyone out on site if needed.
Exactly. So there's two pieces to what she just said. The first piece is automation. So give me a rules engine that I can do to listen to events and automatically take certain actions. And then the other part is visualization, which is, this is in setup. A lot of, most employees at a company do not live inside of the setup menu. And so we need to be able to expose the IoT data about a device directly to the customer service representatives, to the service technicians, and maybe even to the customers themselves via customer portals. So what we're going to do first is the automation step. And so we're going to create a new orchestration, and we're going to give it a name because everything has a name. Okay, there we go. All right. So what do you see?
So this is a screen that I've never seen before in my fake world as an admin, and I don't know what to do here. And I'm a visual learner, so I'm wondering if there's a different screen that I can interact with that might help me learn the product.
Absolutely. Salesforce is all about Trailblazer success, and so we have an experience for the visual learners as well as for the textual learners. And so if you click on states, you'll see something there. What do you see?
Okay, so there's fewer buttons here. It looks like I can basically add states and add transitions. So tell me what a state is.
Okay, so a state is sort of the way that we conceptualize things inside of Salesforce. They're the digital representation in a way that is meaningful to the administrator. And so what I mean by that is, let's go back to the use case. The use case was we have caravans that are sending in temperatures. And when the caravan we know is overheating, we want to do something about it. and when it's not overheating, then everything's good. And so in this particular use case, there are two states. There's regular and there's overheating. Now, if you go to the keynote tomorrow, you'll see that our actual customers generally have much more sophisticated orchestrations that don't just track device state, but also sort of join that together with automation state. So for example, they might say this is the number of times that a customer or a device has been in a certain state or been through a certain journey. And so these things can get very sophisticated, but we're going to keep it simple because it's a 40-minute talk. So, did you just change the color of that?
I did.
Ooh.
So you can completely customize it, whether it's to make it more representative visually or just for branding. So feel free to play around with that.
Okay.
So there's this other button where I can add transitions. Tell me about what a transition does.
Right. And so what we've done now is we basically said a caravan can be in two states. We're telling Salesforce conceptualize a caravan as being in one of two states, either the normal temperature state or the overheating state. The other thing we need to do, though, is define the rules or define the behavior that says what does it take for a caravan that is in a normal temperature state to enter an overheating state based on the information that is flowing in via the platform events and the information inside of Salesforce core.
Okay, so I definitely know that a caravan can go from a normal temperature to an overheating, situation. That's what I'm specifically trying to solve. But I guess when I think about it, what I am trying to do is also ensure that there's a way for the caravan to go from overheating to normal, because we want to get out and fix it or provide the customer with information about how they can fix it themselves. So I'll add one of those as well.
Okay.
So that seems like a basic setup that will help me enable this sort of basic workflow. Okay, so now what do I need to do to actually tell it how it works?
All right, so this is where you start writing the logic that governs these transitions or these rules. And so aptly named, there's a rules tab that we started on.
Okay, and now there's some stuff filled out here, right? So I see additional states. I can also see that these transitions have been filled in, and I feel a little bit more comfortable just reading from left to right as I work through this. So let me say it in English. What I want to do when a caravan seems to be normal is I want to look at the events that are coming in. If any of those events actually say that the caravan is overheating, what I want to do is create a case and then update my view of that caravan to make sure that I record that it's not currently in a particularly good state. And then later I want to make sure that that data is available to service agents.
Right.
So let me start working on that, and you correct me if I'm doing anything wrong. So when I get an event, what I want to do is look at the temperature field on that event.
Right.
So here's the thing, though. There's not like a single value that I can put in here because all of our caravans have different threshold temperatures. Some of them are better fitted for really hot climates and others are not. So that information is saved in Salesforce records. How can I use that in my business rules?
Like an Arctic caravan versus
a desert caravan.
Tundra caravan, yes.
Well, I think
so that stuff is all supposed to be stored inside of Salesforce. And so if you go look at the record for that caravan, you can see that, in fact, we have set up a column called safe temperature. And so you can actually just query that inside of the rule by typing in caravan dot.
So instead of hard coding this, I can just do caravan.safetemperature.
Right. And so we're doing a comparison between data that's coming in from the streaming event and configuration data inside of Salesforce core.
So basically, if I had a fleet of 50 caravans or even 50,000 caravans that all had different threshold temperatures, I'd have to do this once, and then everything would just work.
Yeah, it's dynamic.
Perfect. So let me go ahead and fill that in for the other state too. And this one is basically going to be, when do I start marking the caravan as being normal again? So in this case, if the temperature is less than or equal, then I want to go ahead and move back to that other state.
Got it.
So that's great. Like I have a model now that correctly represents where the caravan is, but I still want to do that case opening. So how do I open a case?
Okay, so in particular, you only want to open a case once the thing overheats, right?
Yeah, so only when I get an event, and only once, right? Like I don't want to open, if the caravan stays overheated for an hour and I'm getting an event every minute, I don't want to open 60 cases. That would really drive the team crazy. So I want to open a single case the first time that I get one of these overheating events.
Right, and when does that occur?
So I guess that would be actually this rule that I wrote first, right?
Because it occurs upon the transition, right? Between one state to another state is when the single transition will only happen once until the caravan recovers, right?
Okay, so actions, I see Salesforce records.
Yes.
And here's a case. I'll go ahead and create that. Cool, so I'll just keep this really simple for now. Can I access those fields from the events in here as well?
I sure hope so.
So I'll go ahead and we'll use the reading.
Good.
Perfect. And then I do also want to add a description field just to sort of describe the origin a little bit. So I want to let the team know, like, hey, this case came from an actual sensor on the actual caravan. It didn't originate from someone calling in and being like, hey, I'm not sure it's working. This is actually something that's a really dependable source of information. So I want them to know that this was generated by IoT.
Right.
Perfect. OK, and I'll give it a name. Awesome. So, all right, so we've taken care of making sure that we have an updated view of how the caravan's doing. We have some basic business logic written to be able to create that case when certain thresholds are exceeded. And now I just need to make sure that the service team actually has visibility into this reading that I'm getting because they don't have access to setup.
Exactly. So this is another big feature that we're announcing at Dreamforce this year, which is IoT Insights. And it's called IoT Insights because you are literally, quite literally, putting IoT data in the site of the people who need it the most. So then we took in the site and put it.
That's not how we came up with the name, but we can pretend.
OK, so basically the first thing we need to do then is we need to tell Salesforce IoT what to track in the first place.
OK.
And so those are called variables in our land. And we call them variables. And fortunately, there's no, what do you call this thing?
Copyright?
The paradox of having too many options. There's only one option.
Oh, two options.
And so it's too easy to use. OK, so this event that we're setting up is only sending in the temperature.
Yeah.
And so we're only going to track one thing in this use case, right?
OK.
But you can imagine that if you have multiple readings coming in a single event, you can have multiple variables.
OK, so the temperature's a number. I'm getting it from this caravan reading. And what I want to do is assign this variable to the caravan reading dot temperature value. I'll just set initial value.
Right.
OK, so anything else that I need to do to enable this?
So that is great. And so you basically told IoT, this is a very unsophisticated rule, right? Which is whenever an event comes in, keep track of the temperature in the event.
Yeah.
But actually, if you saw in that dropdown, you can do many more things than just storing the temperature there, right? You can keep track of like a rolling average over the last 24 hours. Or you can count the number of times that a certain condition was met. And so you can do things like, only raise a case if in the last 24 hours, something happened 3 times in a row. So there's a lot of flexibility hidden inside of there. But let's move on with the demo. So the next thing you have to do is actually expose these things to the end users. And so there is a nice button that says Insights, so probably very intuitive design. Let's go ahead and do it.
All right, so I want to expose this temperature variable. And then this label is what the service agent will see?
Exactly. So this label is what is going to be presented to the people outside of setup. So temperature is our own little label for it inside of the orchestration. But if you want to have punctuation and stuff, you can do it here. Oh, very nice. You even put a degrees in there. Fantastic.
All right, so I'll go ahead and save that. So am I good to go?
Good to go.
All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. Is there a way that I would know if something was wrong? Like, I've never used this before, so how would I know if I mess something up?
I don't know. Try it out.
OK, so I'll just make this an invalid field and save. OK.
Oh.
So it gives me an error if there was something that was wrong, but it'll still save successfully. So that at least helps me know that I'm putting the logic in correctly. Perfect. OK.
It's been there forever. OK.
So let's go ahead. So I saved it. Let me get this running for real. Perfect.
OK. So did you notice that something changed?
Yeah. So there was this on the far left side, this little traffic thing was grayed out earlier, and I couldn't click on it. So So when I go into this, there's a new term that I haven't seen, which is instances. Can you tell me what an instance is?
I could tell you, but even better is, let's get inside the Trailblazer mentality, and we'll just chug forward and figure it out later.
All right. So I really want to test it out now and put in some data. So how?
There we go.
I don't have the Caravan actually hooked up. I don't have the credentials to AWS. So how do I, as a Salesforce admin/developer, just test it out?
Right. We want to use mock data, right?
Yes.
And so last year, you had to go into Workbench to do it. But we built a lot of features over the last year. And so we built another feature called the Event Sender. And it is represented by those three little things to symbolize events being sent in, like a motion. There we go. OK, so this is the event that we created, Caravan Reading, right? But you can see any event that you want to send in. And this quite literally just gives you the body of the event that you need to put in there. And so we want to send in some mock data.
Right. So what I want to do is first pick a safe temperature. So I'm going to send in data about this caravan. So I'm going to send in 125 because that should be under the threshold for it being bad. And then let me get the ID. OK. And
nice
let's go ahead and
recall.
send that.
Very good. OK, so this one maps to the dream event, I believe. OK, so then you see what happens, right? Tell me what you just saw.
So now I have this big bubble in the normal temperature state, and it also says I have one instance. So is an instance the number of events that I've sent, or is it something else?
Right. So why don't you just try sending in another event and see what happens?
OK, I'll send a slightly different one, and we can just see what happens.
So nothing happened.
Yeah, so that didn't change the number. So let's see if I send in data about my other caravan. Let's check that out.
That's the scientific method right there, right? You just change one thing at a time, and then you see what happens. All right, there you go.
So I'm actually tracking multiple caravans in this view, and it's really giving me almost a fleet-level view of how things are going on the ground.
Exactly.
Okay. Perfect. So what I want to do now is test that it's correctly handling the cases where the caravans are overheating. So I'm going to use my original caravan again. And the cutoff for that one, if I look at the safe temperature field, it's this first line, is 150. So I will send in 151, and we'll see what happens.
Wow, that works. So that worked really well, right? And so basically, we're tracking 2 caravans here, and we just mocked the first caravan sending in a new event where the temperature was greater than the threshold value. And so the Salesforce IoT updated the view of that caravan and interpreted that event to say, hey, this caravan is in unhealthy state. In addition to that, remember that we did an action upon the transition from the state of being in a normal temperature to the state of being in overheating temperature. And that was that we wanted it to create a case. And so let's go verify that, please.
OK, so I want to make sure that this case got created. So if I go to cases and I refresh.
Perfect.
So this one was just made at 1 p.m. And it says that's the subject that I put in, that it was overheating.
Right.
Perfect. So that's awesome. Now, the final thing that I wanted to do was make sure that these cases are going to get created, but maybe a service agent doesn't get to see it for 30 minutes.
Right.
So maybe the caravan's recovered, maybe it's gotten worse. I want to make sure that the service agent has the most up-to-date information about the state of the caravan. So how do I get that information into the hands of someone interacting with my caravan custom objects?
In fact, you would even say in the sight of the person who is looking at the record, would you
Exactly.
not? Would you
exactly.
not? OK. So this is IoT Insights. So we set it up inside of setup, right? But now this is where we actually want to put that data directly into the hands of the people who use this view instead. And so this is the asset, right? And so it would be great if we could surface the IoT data that is being tracked inside of setup directly to the end users. And we can do that now with the standard Lightning component. And so to do that, we go ahead and edit the page. And what you will notice is there is something new in there, something that was not there before, and it is called Iot Insights. And so you can just click and drag that thing and select the orchestration that is tracking this particular asset. It's called the Caravan Temperature Monitoring Orchestration, right? And it immediately just finds the right instance, right? It finds the right data that is being stored inside of IoT and then puts it in front of the user here.
Is there a way that I can highlight the temperature reading a little bit more? Because that's a really key indicator that I want the service agent.
Because in some use cases, right, you would have multiple things that are being in multiple variables, not just the temperature, right? If you have many events or events with many fields on them. And so the ones that you want to expose, like front and center, you can actually do that just by adding the variable to the view. And so we're only tracking one. So it's a very simple use case, but you can see there that it basically just pops that thing into its own little panel. And then if you go ahead and save and activate that thing, you can go back and see it.
All right.
And that is fantastic. That is fantastic.
So I really want to see it get updated. I mean, does it actually do really fresh updates?
Or are we selling a fake product, right? So what we want to do then is we want to make sure that when this caravan is back to the normal, whatever it was, I forget, this thing updates. And so we just got to trigger that rule to happen.
OK, so I'll put it back to 125, which should be in the normal range for this caravan. I'll send that event again. And let's look at traffic. So now we have both of the instances back in that normal state. And if I refresh this page, then what I'm hoping is to see that updated as well.
Oh, good.
Perfect. So that means that every time a service agent is working on a case, they'd be able to come to this record or view it in their own service console and get up-to-date information about the status of that device or object that we're monitoring.
That is phenomenal. And so this is a standard Lightning component, right? And we put it directly on the asset object, but you can actually put it on the child of this asset, which is the case. And so this, you can actually configure the case to show the state of the asset. That's one thing you can do with it. You can also embed this into a community or a community cloud, so partner portal, as well as a customer portal. So if you have a little app that you're building, you can actually just drag and drop this thing directly into the app. And this thing is actually going to also be inside of the field service Lightning mobile app natively, if you have the license, obviously. And so what that means is then when your service agents are in the field, on their Android phones only for now, they can actually just pull up the device data and refresh it from their phone. And so basically, you saw, we sort of just juxtaposed two different use cases or two different outcomes for the sake of efficiency. But to recap what we did, right? We did two different things, actually. Number one is we set up an automation based on the streaming event data that was coming in from the devices to automatically open a case. You can, obviously create a task, or you can call, you can call external endpoints as well. So some of our customers actually trigger marketing journeys from core using this thing. And the other thing we did is we exposed device state and variables that we were tracking persisting over time to non-admin users using a standard Lightning component. And so that is sort of IoT Insights in a nutshell.
All right, so in terms of next steps, there is a keynote tomorrow. We have a ton of customer stories that I think it would be really awesome for you guys to hear, to sort of drive some of your ideation around how you can provide value to people through IoT. There's also a ton of different booths that you can check out. So we have an IoT Village, there's a Lego City in it that has a bunch of actual real live connected Lego contraptions running around sending data into the product. IoT booth. You should also check out the service keynote and field service Lightning talks. And there's a bunch of trailheads. So you can just try the quick start for IoT Explorer. If you want to get more hands-on, you can take an electric imp-based trailhead where you can purchase for like 20, 25 bucks a little connected device. You can like stick these things in your fridge. They'll measure temperature and humidity. They're here as well if you want to check them out at Dreamforce. But you can do a full project based on the electric imps, which is really fun. I also have another talk on Friday if you're curious in the change management side of things, and honestly just figuring out how to get a bunch of different departments to work together to do these big kinds of projects. So I'm speaking with the CIO from Town of Cary, Nicole Raimondo, and it's amazing to see how in the public sector they have all the sort of difficulties that we have in the private sector, but just amplified. And they've done an amazing job of building trust across departments and getting, honestly, all their constituents as well as all their partners just really invested in these projects. So I think it's a great lesson for anyone who's interested in that side of things. Great, so we have a couple minutes. If you guys have questions, you're welcome to come up and ask questions. Okay, perfect, sure, we'll do that.
And then one more slide, of course, is the thank you slide, because I think many of you are only in town for a week. And so it actually is very gratifying for you guys to spend time with us here, and it feels good. So what we did was we customized our thank you slide with a bunch of icons. Now, on the corporate template, they say don't use icons gratuitously, but I said, no, I'm gonna do it, because PMs, the most important thing a PM can do is say no. And so we have gone ahead and taken agency in our hands. Okay, so if there's questions, please feel free to speak into the mic, because the session is recorded.
If you're interested in API walkthrough, we did this talk at Trailhead DX. You can find a recording of that on YouTube. It doesn't have us walking around, but at the end of that, we did some API work, so check that out.
Thank you all.
Do you have any guidance on what you should do on the Salesforce side versus on the instrument side? Like the specific example was great for illustrative purposes, but if you think about the only data that Salesforce has in this example that was that interesting was the maximum temperature for each caravan. Like if that was part of the caravan ID, you could have done it in AWS Alpha. or Lambda expression,
Exactly.
and avoided a whole bunch of traffic to
Yes.
Salesforce.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So what a lot of our customers do is they manage everything about the customer. So who's purchased the product, what warranty is it under, maintenance plans, those kinds of details are all in Salesforce. So trying to get that data into another platform just creates a lot of issues with getting things up to sync and keeping them in line. So what they'll do is anytime they're trying to open the case, or if they want to, so Jacuzzi, for instance, and a lot of customers I work with, they try to not do 100% of the cases requiring someone going on site, so they'll send people knowledge articles. Knowing who to send the knowledge article to, what email template to use, all this stuff, that's all managed in Salesforce. So if you're talking to your customer or you need an actual person from your service team to interact with the output, do it in Salesforce for sure.
Yeah, great presentation.
Thanks.
I had a question. Can you actually measure the absence of data? So
Yes.
I want to be able to track heartbeats. And
Yep.
if heartbeat's not there, is that something that?
Yeah. So there's timers. So what you can do in these rules is there's some time expressions. So, I don't have them right now. So you can basically interact with these timers, and what you would be able to do is say, I just have to make a new rule, and it's just not gonna work quickly enough. So you can basically say, like if it's been an hour or something, since I've received data, go take an action. Yeah, so there's the ability to do that.
And on very large data sets, like lots and lots of devices?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm happy to talk about limits and everything afterwards, and we can, allocation,
Great,
sorry.
thank you.
We can, yeah. But it will go up pretty big, yeah. Hi.
Hi. This may be along the lines of the limits.
Yeah.
Can you do this with streaming data going into an external data source?
So can we stream data out?
Well, data coming, we have equipment that streams data right now periodically throughout the day that goes into an external data source.
Oh, okay.
That we would connect to using Salesforce Connect. Can
Oh,
this be
interesting.
triggered through that connection or no?
So I'm not familiar enough with how Connect works. I don't know that they might be able to emit platform events. I can't remember from the last time I spoke to the team. I do work with a customer who puts data into just like, I think like some standard SQL database, and they use Delboomi to sort of wait for changes to that database. Delboomi. MuleSoft would do something very similar. So any product like that that can sort of listen for changes to rows in a database, you can then configure it to emit an arbitrary HTTP output, which could be posting a platform event.
So I guess it's basically just getting events off of one message bus onto another message bus, and so there's a bunch of solutions for that. We do have partners, and I guess the recent acquisition with MuleSoft is part of that is an enterprise message bus.
So, yeah, we are out of time, so we'll
Thank you all
be
for
here,
coming, though.
and we'll
Appreciate
take
it
questions
very much.
outside afterwards. So I'd love to answer your questions. Thank you.